Why struggle through a post-merger integration when you can glide through it? Why deal with the PMI integration challenges when you can overcome them even before they occur? Why move slow when you can move at pace? What are the world's leading PMI experts doing right now to achieve profit-accelerating integrations? This podcast will give you all the answers to these questions and many more. My name is Dudley Peacock, and welcome to the 100 Days and Beyond podcast. Okay, welcome everyone to another episode of 100 Days and Beyond, and also the Fractional CMO Marketing Leadership podcast. I think today it's really, I think, fascinating in terms of the topic we're going to cover, and I'd much rather let Larry do the introduction, but Larry's really got some fascinating background experience in terms of marketing agencies, digital marketing, etc., but also busy with a number of other things. And the first time I actually met Larry, he was in the middle of the bush, which was fascinating. Welcome, Larry. Welcome to the podcast.
Thank you, Dudley. Nice to be here.
I'm so glad you could join us today, and you're looking all smart and all that. So thank you very much for doing that. So I'm gonna just kick off, and we're gonna go straight into it. If you could do me and the audience a favor and just sort of give us your background, tell us sort of from a bio point of view, sort of who are you, where do you come from, so what do you stand for in terms of your values and your direction in life?
Cool. Yeah. So I think I started off living from your part of the world. I grew up in Africa, Kenya, South Africa, the Ivory Coast. Sort of traveled around. Family was sort of prone to doing that for the jobs that they had, and was schooled there. Then went to university in the UK, and focus was on environmental science. You can imagine coming out of a place like South Africa has a big impact on a kid. Was really into the animals and sort of had a natural affinity towards biology, and that kind of morphed into sort of activist biology, let's say, in environmental science. And then went to Oxford, did philosophy there, continued sort of thinking about these topics in a deeper way. Was always very interested in science fiction, so was always interested in the future, the possibility of humanity, the different things that we could achieve as a species. And the different kind of existential threats that we have also by the same token. And so basically from there got really into insect farming. It was a new industry at the time. Wanted to get involved in entomology, actually, because I thought that we can maybe get into that in the course of the interview, maybe at some point. But basically took a lot of advice from people that said, don't go the entomology route, go the entrepreneurial route, because actually it seems more aligned to what you kind of seem to be as a young adult. And there are entomologists that need people with that in the future to do things. And so I sort of took that advice. Looking back on it, I ended up doing that. I got very interested into startups, having no skills as a developer. You can imagine with philosophy and environmental science, having no hardcore dev skills. But I seem to be able to connect dots between people and things, and so that sort of led me towards the sales and marketing side of things. Learned a hell of a lot in my early years working at different jobs, and then decided to strike out on my own with other co-founders to found a digital agency. The idea being that we would help startups who were doing the sort of things that I guess we would love to have been able to do if we had been developers. And so really fell in love with the sort of startup ecosystem around Silicon Roundabout in London, and then working with companies in the States as well, and grew the agency to what it is now, which is in the 35 people, and it's growing into two offices in the UK and in Europe. And and so that's been an exciting journey. Hope to talk about it more with you. And then from there, most recently, I have gone back into insect farming, but actually doing a startup using some of these skills, hopefully in some small way to help us transition to better ways of feeding our animals. And yeah.
I absolutely love that because that's going full circle. I mean, you probably touch on so many different aspects. My view, Larry, is that you love to learn. Would that be a good and sort of good first assumption of you as a person? You love to get your hands dirty, get involved, learn new things, experience new things.
I do, and it can be quite a crippling thing for anyone else who has the same affliction,
The
because
shiny
it's
object syndrome could be quite
exactly.
difficult.
Exactly. So, while I am able to focus on something for a while, you do wonder sometimes whether you are more interested in your next steps, because it's a whole set of new things, and it's just another bunch of interesting things that you could be doing with your life, as opposed to, should you be more focused? But I think some kind of good balance ends up being the story, as is everything in life.
As is everything in life, exactly.
Yeah.
And I love the when I looked at your LinkedIn profile, but also just having a chat to you when you were standing there in Kenya. I think you were close to
Yeah.
your farm, your insect farm there. That's right, eh?
That's right.
So
Yeah.
so when I look at that, and I see from the digital marketing side of things, how you managed to work on and build an agency, when a 35-person agency is not insignificant. I mean, that's quite difficult to go through sort of a 1-man and a 2-man and a 3-man show to 35 people, to growing it
Mhm.
out and building a customer base. And obviously, with digital marketing agencies have their own sort of challenges and so on, in terms of scale and so on, because it's very much a knowledge-based business. But what's interesting, that I just want to pick on that. I want you maybe just to expand on that a bit. You talk about marketing automation and so on, and outbound and inbound leads and that. But what was interesting there is the B2B psychology.
Yeah.
I want to just unpack that a little bit for me, a little, before we go sort of into etymology and the
Sure.
philosophy side of things.
Sure. And so, yeah, I think B2B psychology, or in general, I guess, psychology and marketing, is somewhat of a dark art, or it's somewhat of a kind of dirty secret, in the sense that it sort of relies on you understanding the consumerist tendencies of the population, whether those are like ingrained or have been, I don't know, culturally or whatever, programmed into people, and just knowing what buttons to push. So when it comes to B2B psychology versus B2C, a lot of people talk about things like, how a checkout area should look, how an e-commerce audience is going to behave on a page if you change X, Y, or Z. And there's a lot of data on that. And usually because the traffic to these sites is so large that you can change micro bits of copy and get different results. And so psychology, even in colors and things like that, like having a green button versus a red button, there's all these sort of psychology has been looked at from the consumer point of view, from the e-com, and even the sort of SaaS point of view. But it's never really looked at the kind of high ticket. It's not looked as often at the high ticket side of things, except for in the info product sector, if you want to call it that. So all the people that are selling you courses on, how to get a 6-pack, or how to, date somebody, or, the various people out there, selling something like that. And then you've got this B2B side, where everyone talks about things like the buyer's journey. They talk about these sort of content strategy fundamentals, like how you build authority as a business, how authority relates to kind of lead generation, how you can use trust signals in your landing pages to generate more leads out of it. There's a kind of a sort of science of B2B, but it hasn't gone to the level of trying to, for some reason, we sort of leave the fact that a B2B audience are human beings at the door as B2B marketers. We sort of think, well, they're just like a corporate representative of their company, so I'll just plug in, have this problem, here's this solution, and try and get in that way, without sort of really using all the tools that are there. So looking at the human being at work as doing some very important things in their life, such as generating status. So when you understand why people are trying to accumulate money, it's really to do certain other things in their life, and it's all with the idea of building more status in the areas that they find are important to build status in. So that can be anything from, I need a better car because I think then if I have a better car, people will think X of me, and if they think X of me, then I will do better with my friends. It's complex things that human beings get up to, and it's not always obvious, but basically at work, people are trying to um, look intelligent to their colleagues. They're trying to get better job security. They're trying to increase their pay so they can do all the other things in their life that they want to do with their pay. There's fundamental things that we're actually doing. And by not talking or addressing those things and just saying, hey, your company would be great for this product because your company needs it. You should say that, but you can get so much further if you also hint at or allow the person to understand, or to trip that little wire that says, hey, this is also directly beneficial for you and your career and your step on the ladder and what comes with all of that and all those things that you actually dream about at night, that would only happen if you could get to that next step. Well, this is the key to that next step, as well as being great for your company and great compared to competitors and all the other standard B2B, markers. And I think we forget that in B2B.
Yeah, and I think just to expand on that thought, because I think especially around the podcast and the audience that we generally have on these podcasts are people that question the next layer down. This is not one of those flashy podcasts where we talk about make $1 million in 5 minutes because you can download a PDF for I don't know $4 or something ridiculous. So this is not that kind of podcast. I mean, for me, it's about peeling away some additional layers. So some of the additional layers around B2B psychology and so on. And I've been in the B2B space for quite some time. And what I found useful was to try and understand. I mean, you talk about the buyer's journey as opposed to a sales process. It's like, how do you map your business purchasing or acquisition of a service or a product for the use of the company? The bigger the company, the more complex, the more authorizers you have, the more decision makers you have, the more influencers you have, and the more probably ego and other things you have at play. And then also the dynamics within the organization also come to play. So there's so many different things. But what I try to do, and maybe I need your sort of view on this, is what I try to do with the B2B space is to try and map when you are engaging with B2B clients. And often these are bigger ticket sales. I'm talking about big ticket software sales or big ticket sort of equipment or something like that, or a refurb of a factory, or even, like these big power stations, they need, maintenance schedules and things like that. So these are big service or big product-based sales. When you start building out a map and you stop looking at CFO and CEO and CMO, and you look at all these different executives, and then you say, okay, it's not about title, it's not about that, is how do you get past I think this is where the difficulty is when you're selling to a B2B space, is as quick as possible to get into the personal space of those people to better map who you're trying to target. And I think that where the difficulty is, a lot of companies make this mistake, is where, I mean, I could think of a few software vendors that do this. So they go and they try and build this brand because it is the sort of, again, the credibility. And I think you talk about that authority and so on, but it's not necessarily the authority that makes the person make the final buying decision or triggers that buying decision process or the influence of it. And when you start peeling it away, you start saying, okay, I'm a B2B, do B2B sales from the point of picking up a lead or an interest, because these days you would know as well, from a digital marketing point of view, you can pick up intent via, there's software out there, artificial intelligence and other types of things around, not only just cookies, the tracking software, but now there's behavioral types of tracking software that pick up when people are searching more for something as opposed to something else. And then you have these spikes in these intent searches. And if you could find who in the company is doing those searches. Often it's a junior doing it
Yeah.
on behalf of a senior, and then collecting information. So it's very, very difficult to make the transition. So just tell us, sort of, when you in your agency, how do you deal with a client who does B2B sales? I mean,
Hmm.
and they're struggling. Okay, so now they're
Yeah.
in a position where we're trying to get into these companies. The world has changed. We can't get hold of the right people. Decision making has changed. People have got tired and they got mentally stressed and all that kind of thing. I mean, all these pressures that we're going through, and now there's sort of what they call cost of living, all the other stuff, and people are mentally, under pressure. Tell me how you would
Yeah. Yeah.
advise somebody, taking all those different aspects as to a
Yeah.
good, decent enough process for a B2B type of entity.
Yeah, I mean, I think definitely your background is more sort of in this kind of the sort of sales enablement side of things, whereas we sort of drop the ball, drop the opportunity at the sales qualified lead. So we don't necessarily distinguish or are able to build a lot of that in. So, for instance, the kind of companies we work with are, let's say, SMEs that are maybe 100 people plus, that are, like you say, selling some innovative software, like tech startups. And what they're looking for is to generate leads, whoever those people may be. And they're still, in terms of how you discover the types of leads that make the most sense for your company, ultimately what they want is usually inbound leads. So it's mainly like people that are relying too much on outbound leads, or relying on buying in leads. They would come to us and say, look, we want to restructure everything so we have lots of inbound people knocking on our door. But yes, you're quite right that initially you may be you may have a subset, or even a large part of your leads are the junior down the road who's not really at the point at which they are ready to convert. I mean, they might just be doing research. And so I think there's ways you can build into your forms, and like you say, there's tools you can use to sort of try and piece together who that person is, and then serve them with additional content that's maybe more about like empowering them to get the opportunity across to their superiors and all the information they need to progress it. But I mean, we don't do the sort of ABM work, the real like key accounts, really looking at, okay, I want these 100 companies I want to get in, where the sort of thing you're saying, I totally would defer to you. I think you've spent a lot more time looking at how you approach a plan of attack to like a set audience of really large companies. It's a completely different kettle of fish. I totally agree. Yeah.
Yeah, and I think that's very useful information, because you have the MQLs, as they call it, marketing qualified leads. There's
Yeah.
SQLs, which are the sales qualified leads. And a lot of people
Yeah.
don't always understand the difference between where does marketing, especially B2B and B2B psychology, where does
Yeah.
marketing start and end, and where does
Yeah.
sales sort of take over? And I think
And
you've done exactly that now, and I'm enjoying what you're saying there. So carry on.
Yeah. Yeah. So I think that any marketer that's telling you that they need to stop at MQL, I think is not being quite serious, because they're certainly, if you're at the point where you're talking about MQLs and SQLs, you're definitely a size of company where you can build a closed loop analytic infrastructure. Like, there's no reason why your leads, however they're generated, should not be passing through your CRM. And when the opportunity is created, that the Google ad ID or the Facebook ad ID or the whatever IDs are imported into the CRM, and the deal value is assigned to it. And then even when they close, that data is sent back to the ad platforms, so that you can actually see how much bottom line, lifetime value did this keyword or did this campaign generate. And so, marketers just saying, well, look, we're just going to give you MQLs and we're just going to optimize for lower MQLs. Those days are so over. There's so much more that you can do to make sure that, you sort your analytics out. So that every pound that you're spending on your digital campaigns, anyway, that's the area kind of I would do. But you can do this with trade shows and everything, depending on how you collect information at the trade show. But of course, you could have the same window into your CRM just on whatever portable device you're getting people to enter in stuff at the trade show or whatever. There's other ways you can bridge the analog world in here. But once people enter in your CRM, the source should be known down to every single, tracking pixel on every source that they could have come in from. And then assuming the sales team has got a process they're following in the CRM, then the end, close value should be reflected. And then in your analytics, you should be able to see these channels created this much LTV this month. And then you can actually know what you should be spending your marketing budget on. But I think where you would definitely need to kind of school me on is sort of how you build a sales team that even when they're generating those leads is able to talk with them. I mean, I do this in my own life, but I mean, there's definitely some nuance that I'm probably not, aware of on how you can take those leads and expand the relationships.
The difficulty is the tracking of it, because it's the beauty about marketing and digital marketing is that a lot of that online stuff can be tracked, but B2B generally has a longer sales cycle, for instance, and they got lots of upsells and cross sells, etc. So you often have a leading product that someone would buy, but maybe 2 years later they buy the upsell. Let's say it's a software platform, they buy additional users, they buy additional plugins, et cetera, et cetera. It's very, very, very difficult to make sure that the entire ecosystem called sales and marketing from a B2B space, and then to try and work that back. And then I'm going to come back to that B2B psychology. It's at what point, and I'm thinking, and I think this is probably where a lot of your background probably comes in quite useful, is being able to potentially go back and say, let's go and look at the entire journey that the customer had from even the lost deals, find out why they lost, find out why they didn't happen, because, we know it's a numbers game, and it's a 1 in 3 or 1 in 5 or 1 in 10. I don't know, depending on how competitive the market is. But understanding the lost deals versus won deals, and then why were they won, why were they lost, and feeding that back into your personas and your ideal customer profiles so that you can better run your marketing campaigns and your lead generation campaigns and the language and that you use on the websites. So yes, I mean, that's probably for me where I think there's this very nice overlap, and why I'm glad that you're a guest today. I'm also finding that in the B2B space, and you're a younger guy. I mean, you're part of the younger generation, and I'm finding that the older generation people, my generation, many of them are still stuck in, when I started selling, we were using the A to Z. You don't carry a telephone around with you. You go to the office and you make phone calls to make appointments, and then you put them in your handwritten sort of diary, as we called it those days, the calendar, and you go, and then you on this map book, and you try to find the places, and you go through this process of what leads, how do I get leads in, and sales generally carried a lot of the marketing pressure, and then marketing used to just be advertising. I think that's where it used to be. Now, tell me about that, sort of your view, being a young guy entering a world where there's a lot of history and, let's say, ecosystems that already had developed, and now you're coming into sort of digital marketing space. You're seen as something potentially sort of fresh and new, as a brand, as a group out here. The youngsters, they know stuff about the internet. Is that necessarily true? And is that sort of is there a benefit in sort of this generational gap, if you like?
Yeah. I think there's again, it will come down to the company in question. If they are really targeting, like they have a real accounts based sort of marketing strategy. So if they can only work with like the top 100 petroleum companies and their product only aligns to that, then that is a much more, I see the sort of, if you want to call it old school, but I think those skills being like the core, the sales skills that you're talking about, being far more relevant than what marketers can do. I mean, marketers would still be in the position of like advertising, sponsoring content, just making it so that whoever the potential personas or the buyer personas within each of those companies, they would be all over LinkedIn, they'd be all over the kind of digital PR, press on all of the kind of sites that these sort of people would be reading, traditional PR, that sort of more advertising approach, sending knickknacks or interesting toys to people's desks, and they're like, what is this? Or sending them letters. There's all sorts of techniques that I still think have a lot of value for that hard to reach, constantly bothered audience. I really do believe that. But where I kind of sit, or where the brain sits, and it's definitely like medicine we eat ourselves, is for a certain type of B2B company, one that is maybe, let's say, more in the professional services, or the kind of known category, a known category like law firm, accountancy, plus like 100 others. I mean, but the kind of a category that doesn't require education, or doesn't require a massive tender process, things that tend to be 3 to 6 month very well trodden path decisions for for other companies. There you can build an entire strategy of just pure inbound lead gen, and you don't actually even need to hire salespeople. You hire essentially account managers who in your walk of life, or in the past, would have absolutely sunk if they tried to do a single outbound call. They would fold immediately. They just would have no hope in doing that. But you can then, rather than hiring those people, you can generate an entire inbound ecosystem where you just wake up every morning and there's just meetings filling in your calendar, and you never touch the system. It just all comes into the calendar, whether that is sponsored content funnel going into a HubSpot nurturing funnel, going into a book a time to speak, a call to action at the end, or it's a Google ads, or it's a search engine optimization. Whatever the way is, you can set those up so that it's completely hands free. And what you're doing at that point, with some good degree of tweaking until you've got it right, you're just having people. It's not really a sale at that point. If you've built your brand well enough, and the roots in the inbound roots in, you're mainly just sort of almost you're doing a criteria fit. You're just sort of evaluating the client as to whether they fit what you do. And so you basically have account managers who come to scheduled calls and are basically looking for reasons not to work with the person, like looking how to fit them into what you want to do and how you can scale your company. And that's a much easier, and it's the situation at the brains. Like we have, it's just, what I mean? It's more that you're actually looking for reasons why you don't want to deviate. You have your certain core services, you have your 2-year strategy, and you know what you want to be doing more of, what types of companies you want to work with, and you're looking for a client agency fit, and kind of going through a list of questions. And the person on the other side is not expecting you to prove that you know anything about marketing. Like, they've already been through the funnel. Like, they're already at the door, because they've already been sort of convinced. They're now looking for a quote. They're now looking to sort of compare. They're at the bottom of the funnel already. So you've kind of, the funnel has sort of just done all that for itself. So I think there's two different things there. If we're talking strictly B2B, there's companies that get to do the latter, and then the ones that really are going after a niche audience. The kind of skills that you're talking about from maybe an older generation, far more applicable. And I think a lot of people in the younger generation actually can't do that anymore. They I don't know what it is. They just seem maybe a bit too. This is a super generalization, obviously, but I feel like there was a bit of a more hard-nosed, more take it on the chin, every no gets you closer to a yes type of mentality. Maybe in the past. Now everyone expects the internet to just serve up opportunities, and to everyone sort of has a right to. You've got a right to leads. You're not going to have to go and make your own leads. I've got a right to a lead. That sort of thing.
I love that. Yeah, and I asked you specifically, and you answered absolutely perfectly, because it's exactly that. And this qualification process, and I think the companies that get it right know who they are, they know what they stand for, and they have products and services that are configured for a repeatable process, or a repeatable sort of operational procedure that delivers better results, because you can repeat it in such a fashion that you know where all the pitfalls are, because you've been through it a number of times. I think the difficulty is where companies, I mean, even digital marketing agencies, I think we touched on that
Oh
when
yeah,
we spoke previously. Digital
we
marketing
made this
agencies
mistake
sometimes
and are digging
try and
ourselves
be
out of
too
it. Yeah.
customized. They try too
Yes.
many, like, oh, today I've got a dentist and tomorrow I've got, I don't know, a mechanic and then an architect and then a this and a that. And what I love about the way that things have gone, and yes, you're probably right from a sales point of view, it's probably less aggressive and probably more about, more about sort of taking a softer approach, if you like. I'm not sure if that's the right way to say, because these days you've got to be very careful what you say. But I think if you look at that whole dynamic, for me, is the better companies now today are the ones that are able to set up a repeatable framework within a
Hmm.
narrow space. And when you're
Hmm.
generating leads, your pipeline and not the pipeline, the actual sales process, your landing page and your sales funnels and all that, lead the person on that path, because that is what they resonate with. Those are the
Yeah.
results that they want, and those are the results that as a company you can deliver. So tell us a bit
Yeah.
about that journey, because I found that fascinating when we spoke, because you had gone through that learning curve of, I think, trying to be what we used to call all things to all men, to
Yeah.
then narrowing that focus. Tell us a bit about that journey. How did you sort of get through that?
Yeah, so we started in 2015, and I'd say it sort of took us probably 3 years to learn that lesson. So almost half of the time the agency was, a lot. Looking back on it now, a lot of time. You don't want to say wasted, because I guess you wouldn't have learned those lessons anyway. But it would be lovely to have just not had to learn the lessons and just start out with it, with the info sort of intuited. But yeah, so we started out trying to go full service, because it's kind of the temptation is there when you're a smaller company, which is, you don't have a reputation yet. So you're sitting there thinking, I have a lead, whatever that lead wants. You're not thinking about it in terms of, does this fit who I am? You're thinking about it as in, I'm desperate for business because I've hired a bunch of people and I probably shouldn't, because I'm a new company owner, and I thought the good times would always last. And now, I'm faced with having to let people go unless I can get work in. Can I sort of jam some square pegs into round holes? And that is, I think, that's a real thing that happens. I mean, it would be great if everyone could have the benefit of, like, I don't know, I guess actually working in the industry before. I'd never worked in the marketing industry, well, not very long before I started. But I think a much more sensible route to starting an agency would have been do 5 years in an agency, see all these problems, listen to this program, listen to Dudley Peacock actually talk to you about these frameworks, and then go out and build, like, just execute. We'd probably be just as far along. So we've almost had sort of client-sponsored education for 3 years, which would have been probably better for all parties involved if we just turned up now with the information we had. How much you have to sort of feel the pain. I'm one of those people that has to feel the pain. I have to feel that the stove is hot before, even if you tell me 100 times, I've got to first just confirm it and just touch it with my hand before I get it into my head that it's a real thing. And so I think, I think it's just the way it goes. The temptation is always to just take whatever the client is saying, because you've
Well, I
got
mean,
them
you
right
got
there.
bills to pay, don't
And
you?
yeah,
I mean, you got bills to
yeah,
pay. You also are excited as well. I mean, there's also a level of passion and interest, because you might not have tackled this particular issue before, this project or this type of
yeah,
client, and it's sort of the shiny thing. It's like, oh, this sounds like a good idea. I'm going to tackle this. This is my new client, and you're all happy about it. And then
yeah,
a month, 3 months later, the client's all upset with you, or you are unhappy because you're being pulled in this direction. You need to go there. Very,
yeah.
very interesting. But one of the podcasts I did some time back, I spoke a bit about the hero's journey. That standard sort of
Yeah,
human journey where you have that that call to action, and then the fall, and then the climbing out of the hole, and
yeah.
having
I know. Yeah,
the, I
yeah,
don't know, mentors and all that along the way, or the Yoda or Luke Skywalker and so on. And then by the time you're out of this big pit, you're better off, and you're a better person, and you've had not just an external but an internal transformation. I mean, I see that story all the time, and I think it's a good thing. I don't think anything that's easily won, and there's the shortcut, and that's why people try and avoid the tough journey. And I think you're actually
Yeah.
worse off for it. And I think
Hmm.
even younger generations, and this is again probably just a generalization, but younger generations are often more cotton wool, raised, that they
Yeah.
don't actually experience those hard times, the pressures of failing. And I think
Yeah.
many parents do their children a disservice by
Yeah.
saying, you know what, actually go and give it a try. And if it doesn't work, you know what, I'm here if you need me, but I'm not going to go and carry you every step of the way. And I think that for
Yeah.
me is the difference between the younger and the older generation, because we were raised different. But again, it's a
Yeah.
generalization. But that hero's journey, I think, is massively important. And I think you're better off for it. I don't know
I
what your
absolutely
opinion.
agree. I absolutely agree, and I completely see what you're saying with the kind of younger generations of which I'm a part. I mean, I don't know what it was about maybe my folks, but they were, I was up to a lot of things that I shouldn't have been as a child, and they didn't seem to really care. I think, but I think it's this sort of like precious child syndrome where, because birth rates have been declining, all across Europe, and this is quite a tangent, but it's that people are having less kids per family, and so the less of a thing that you have, the more precious you are about, like, oh well, nothing bad can happen to this, because it's so expensive to have a child now, and it's, with real wages have not increased, in line with inflation. They sort of what's called paired off in like the 80s or whenever it was, and so people have been getting kind of gradually less resources to even have kids, and then the kids they have, they're like super precious about, and plus a whole bunch of other
Can
things
I
that
can
the
I
culture
can I
is throwing up.
can I
Yeah.
challenge you a bit, because you studied this stuff, and I think it's
Yeah.
not tangent. It's I'm glad we got to this point, because you actually studied
Yeah.
a bit of this stuff, and you spoke about the human beings as a species, etc., etc., and this whole sort of looking at the human race, and how everything is developed and so on. And I want your sort of opinion on this, where I think that the standard of living has increased.
Hmm.
The wage, the wage sort of what people perceive as their wages or salaries, and that the incomes have not gone up. Okay, as in relation to, I still think 50 years ago we didn't have dishwashers, we didn't have washing
Well,
machines, we
also
didn't
social
have.
welfare, Dudley. Our social welfare programs are so much more developed now that, yes, you're right, that in a way
So
you're
are
getting
we
a lot of
truly
handouts from the
worse
state.
off?
Yeah.
And is
Yeah.
it really an excuse? And this is a question I've had. Is it really an excuse to have fewer children? Because what happens is it also messes up the lineage. If you look at the bigger, I mean, we've got the Queen passed now, and
Yeah.
you're looking at them trying to tighten the family, and sort of narrow the royal family, if you like, and you start thinking, what are people doing automatically when they are having fewer kids? They creating a scarcity mentality, aren't they? And to a certain extent, it's
Mm.
like, I don't have enough, therefore. But actually, you know what? You're sitting over the weekends, binging on Netflix, ordering in takeaways. You're doing loads of different things that people up to 100 years ago worked 7 days a week. Was uncommon
Yeah.
to have a weekend. It was like, it just wasn't a thing. You worked
Yeah.
7 days a week. It was just that's just the way it was. Now it's like,
Yeah.
then I think with the advent of sport and all that, I think 100 or so years ago, then Saturdays became a thing. It's my weekend now. It's Saturday. Then they had to find a way to entertain people on the weekends, and then there was all these sports. But you know more about this stuff than I do. But I just want to sort of throw it out there, and tell me what you think in terms of your studies and your experience.
Yeah, and I think this is where, sadly, like the sort of being a marketer kind of conflicts with a lot of the kind of values maybe that I have. In a way, it depends on what you're doing the marketing for, right? If you're doing the marketing for a very valuable charity, or something that's going to save people loads of money, then you can really get behind it. And of course, when you want to work with clients, you want to do things that map onto what you think is good for the world. You don't want to be selling casino casino apps, or buy alcohol at 24/7 kind of apps, or you know what I mean. So you can absolutely align to these things, and marketing can be a powerful tool to help to do a lot of good in the world. Um, but I think that most marketing sort of taps into a sort of mindless consumerism, and I think that has been sort of ratcheting up more and more and more. As the more data we've had, the more buttons we're able to push with people, and it sort of leads them. And I think this feeling that I'm describing, that things were better before, and I don't have anything left, or I can't have kids, or all the rest of that sort of feeling, comes from people spending a really big portion of their attention and resources on pursuing things that really have been inserted in there. And this isn't a conspiracy theory. It's just if you're continuously looking at Instagram and you see everybody, it's kind of like keeping up with the Joneses, but except for on an international scale. So now, instead of your neighbor being the Joneses, who have a slightly better model of BMW than you, your Joneses is Kim Kardashian jumping out of her Ferrari or something. And so now you're constantly looking out, and then you're then being reinforced with marketers saying, here's this aspirational brand, go and spend all of your money on Nike, go and spend all your money on these holidays and stuff that you just get into this consumerist trap, and it makes a lot of money for a lot of big companies, so it's a complex thing. I'm not pretending to be some sort of to have all this, any of the solutions, but I definitely agree with what you're saying, that people are sort of different from in the past, wanting things very different. They're wanting very different things out of their weekends, out of their social life, out of their what they're entitled to kind of enjoy, and those entitlements actually cost a lot when it comes down to it. That we're just consuming so much more than we would before. That of course it seems as if there's never any money or resources to do everything, because there's so much resources that need to be spent on getting to the next rung of the ladder, that the ladders, I should say, they're presented to you every day by brands and celebrities. So yeah,
it's crazy, and I'm an observer at this stage of this behavior, and I think when people say that they can't afford certain things, I mean, all you have to do is probably just go and have a look at their budget. Do they have to live where they live? Do they have to drive the car, or have the Sky TV package that's got everything on it, and do they have to go down to the pub every night, kind of, or whatever it is, whatever they do, they don't have to. In years ago, those things weren't even available. But you're right. So this is where marketing often conflicts with what I think is human, basic human needs. And I think we've way surpassed sort of the basic, the Maslow's hierarchy of needs, if you like. And from a marketing point of view, this has also created additional challenges and things to be able to market to people more on an aspirational basis, trying to connect with emotions and trying to be, potentially more aspirational than you should. And this is where the ethics start coming in. And I don't want to mention the names, but there are a few people out there that are really riding off the back of this aspirational thing, especially these motivational speakers and so on. I mean, you probably know them, the property gurus, and
I've studied them quite extensively.
The guys that clap hands and raise hands and shout hoorah and all that kind of thing. And they really I think they're just milking the people out of more time, more focus, more energy, that really, we all have the ability to do things. Just get on with it.
Yeah.
And I think that's probably, and I know that sounds very philosophical, but again, it comes back to what you've studied. And now I want to go again into, we can maybe finish off with a conversation, but I want to go into this thing that you're in, this insects and the entomology and so on. So now you marketing, I mean, you've got this real good understanding of humans and and human behavior and so on. And now you're getting into insects. I mean, that's probably, probably, how does that fit? Just tell us how that fits.
Well, I think, I think to do justice to the discipline of marketing, just to round off our conversation is, for me, we talked about all the ways in which it can be used to prey on the kind of aspirations or like consumerist tendencies that people might have, and to, like you say, milk them out of things that everyone, the other person on the other side should know is not appropriate, but ethics be damned, for a lot of people, unfortunately. But ultimately, what marketing should be able to do is, as something that increases the velocity of efficiency in the economy. So, like that. I mean, I've just made that up, but I don't know how to explain it. But it's more like, if there's two companies and one of them genuinely has a better service, or they've done an innovation that allows other companies to benefit and reduce their margin, like improve their margins by 5%, which then obviously gets taxed and then goes into social services, is of immense benefit to the whole of society, that product or innovation or service or company be the leader of the pack. You would not want them stifled under a massive marketing budget of a multinational who is just weighing down and just just rooted in like a big oak, and not letting all of these exciting blooming flowers grow. And so I just think that as a marketer, you can come to the marketing world with a real sense of ethics and a real sense of wanting to do something for society, wanting companies that genuinely should be delivering their service, and you can help people with a smaller budget, using creativity, using all those skills to pinpoint and get a beachhead in, and push out for the benefit of society at large. And I think that's the thing that drew me to marketing. That I was really into what startups were doing. So I was really involved. I was involved with a bunch of startups before I started the agency, many of which failed. Not me personally, but I joined as like the first employee or whatever for different like delivery startups and green tech startups. It was really fascinating ride, and that's where I discovered I really enjoyed the marketing sales side of things, because I tried my hand at everything, and that's what I love the most. But being in those companies, you really wanted them to do well, and they really had an opportunity to do well. It's just that they didn't have the skills to communicate that and to build the trust needed to unleash this awesome force on the world. And so I thought, if I could learn that skill, and next time I have one of these ideas, maybe myself or I'm with other people doing it, then I would feel confident that we can do it. And so the insect farming thing, the insect farming came from university. I've always wanted to do it. In fact, at the Brains, all of my co-founders know that I was eventually going to do this. I was just basically building enough seed capital to do what I wanted to do. And so I like, for my dissertation, I at uni like 12 years ago or whatever, I was with the original guy who started insect farming in South Africa. Actually, he was the first ever person to do it at a commercial scale. It was a company called Agri Protein, and I had a really great interview and did my whole thesis on what they were up to. And I was just like, this makes so much sense, because again, it's about efficiency. It's just, we have all this wasted food and wasted organic material that comes out of like food processing, food warehouses, food logistics, the side of stores, bakery. Just, there's so much just organic matter. We waste about a third of the food that we eat. Nothing is done with it. And then at the same time, you have insects who are readily consumed by fish, by chickens, by pigs, monogastric animals. They love insects. In fact, that's what all the pecking is about with chickens. And we're currently feeding them fish meal and soya meal. Fish meal, contributing to the destruction of our oceans. Soy meal contributing to the destruction of our forests, one of the largest ones, and obviously all the CO2 that comes with that. So even if you take the environmental side away, it's like you have insects which multiply at the rate of knots. So they can grow from barely visible to this size, about centimeter and a half and 200 milligrams within 10 days. And you can have these things eat through tons and tons of waste, turning it into fertilizer and protein and fat filled larvae, which you can then sieve the two products apart, and you can dry the larvae, and you can grind them into powder, and you can sell them to feed millers and create animal feed products, which are based on insects, which they will happily eat, be much healthier for them, save waste, and it's actually better for their guts, because they naturally fish and chickens and pigs naturally eat insects. They don't naturally go around eating fish or chewing soya. So there's it was just one of these ideas where it was like, it's a win-win-win-win. It's a cheaper product. It's displacing an environmentally, look, I'm very happy that we fed our animals. We needed food to have a societies that we have. But if there's a problem, capitalism is here to provide a solution. And so there's a problem now. We're recognizing it. Let's just crack on. And just no one has to be green if you're putting money in their pocket. If I go to a food processor and say, hey, I can manage all of your feed waste, I can manage all of your food waste, your organic waste, and I can manage it for free. So all that money you're spending dumping it, have that money back. And I'm going to come and manage your waste. And I'm going to be doing some stuff in shipping containers on your site. There's going to be insects in there. I'm going to be bringing insects, taking insects away. I need a corner of your site, and you never have to worry about waste again. It's sort of like putting money in their pocket. It's making a better feed. It's helping the environment. It's increasing efficiency of waste. It was one of those ideas where I was like, this isn't even a green business. It's just like an efficiency business. And so it just stuck with me, and I wanted to do something in it the whole time, but I had to learn how to be an entrepreneur and go through all these things. And then luckily I met up. I had friends already in the industry because I've been looking at it for a long time. One of which was a phenomenal woman called Andrea, who's been C-suite at two of the largest insect farming companies in the UK. And we decided to pair up, and we're now in the UK and in Kenya. But currently most of our operations are in Kenya, but that's kind of shortly to change. And so I don't know, I think it's just kind of that whole efficiency arc that I was talking about trying to do something good in society, I think is just what I guess is at the root of these things. But it's much more obvious in the insect farming one than the marketing one. And I think that's why I just knew eventually I was going to have to jump into something like this. Yeah.
And I think the way you finished off the marketing segment and segued into this insects, I think says a lot about you as a person. So you've clearly got a core set of values. So you know what it is that you want in. I think you probably knew already years ago what you wanted to achieve, but the task was probably such a mammoth task that you wanted to achieve initially. You didn't realize what kind of journey you had to go through to get to where you are right now. And I'm guessing it still feels a bit overwhelming, and you probably got big plans and so on. That's why I want you back on the podcast and in 6 or 12 months to see what your progress is and so on. But I think the way that you finished the marketing segment and then went into insects just shows that you can, and there are people that are abusing the marketing, but marketing, nothing good happens without somebody buying something. There's got to be a transfer of money. Money in the bank doesn't work. Money that's out in the market and that is delivering value, more value than the actual value of the money or of the effort or the sweat equity as the startup companies would call it. But I think where you've done it very well, Larry, is I think that understanding that there's a certain value set. There's also the importance of focusing and finding a particular course, having a broad experience in terms of your entrepreneurial skills, grown a company, gone through those hard times, and understanding that there's systems and processes and procedures that you have to create a repeatable process, which you're probably doing now automatically anyway in your insect business, because you know that without that you can't sort of plug and play and you can't scale. So you understand
it's been so fast, Dudley. Like this company, within 24 months, it's 15 people, and we've raised I think by the end of this month it'll be like 1.1 million in like 22 months. And it's just because we just hit the ground. I mean, it's like exactly what to do. You've just learned the lessons. I mean, it's obviously different. I'm not on the ops side. I'm on the commercial side. So getting our partners in place. So it's still very much sales, marketing, branding, and some on-site stuff as well, which is new to me, which I really like. That's the kind of learning new stuff, and getting my head around the tech. Like, I know our tech inside out. I'm sitting there with the engineers every day, because one day I'm going to be sitting in front of people telling them how much better our tech is than others, and I need to like talk like an engineer. So for that reason, I'm sort of helping in that department as well. But yeah, just with the other guys that I'm lucky enough to have with you, Andrea and Tom, like they've all been through startup world a lot and come with a lot of great skills, and it's just so much easier the second time round. So totally agree with you.
Yeah, no, well done for that, and that's why I wanted you on the show, because I think it just brings a completely different view. I mean, this show most of the time we have mergers, acquisition guys, we have people that are post-merger integration, and we also focus a lot on the marketing side of things as fractional CMOs and marketing leadership and so on. But I think your story and your background and what you've done is really, I think, a shining example of what entrepreneurship is all about. It's about just putting yourself out there. You find something that you're a bit passionate about, you just go for it. I mean, you studied something, you did something different, you built a business, but every time it's not just the scaling of wealth, and that you haven't spoken about at all, about making loads of money and sort of like, sailing off into the sunset on a I don't know, whatever, yacht and so on. But you talk about adding value, you talk about you get excited about the stuff that you're busy with. And I think that's the mark of an entrepreneur, because I think you never actually stop. That's to a certain extent why I called my company The Skillful Pursuit, because it's the constant search or pursuit of skill and of challenging yourself and just becoming better and better and better. And that's
Absolutely.
really, for me, a shining example of that skillful pursuit of what you've done.
Yeah.
So I thought I'd just share that. I thought
just trying to get someone behind me to not come in. Yeah. But yeah, I mean, thanks. Yeah, I mean, like it's like I'm taking it one day at a time. It's
as you do, you've got to do that.
As one does. Yeah. Exactly.
Yeah. But okay. So tell us about, so you're an entrepreneur. The last few minutes of the podcast, and just tell us just briefly, sort of, how do you keep a bit of balance? I mean, you can't just be working all the time. Hopefully you've got a bit of balance, if there is such a thing. If there's not such a thing, that's also okay, because in my career, very seldom I've ever had a thing called balance. But that's another story. But tell us, do you have that? And then maybe just sort of finish off with, if people want to get hold of you, how do they do that? And if they want to engage with sort of more of what you do and so on, just share a bit of that with us.
Okay, cool. Yeah. So, I mean, balance wise, that's an interesting one. I mean, I guess I don't sort of see that concept, just in the sense that, like, I really enjoy, or I practice, mindfulness meditation quite a lot. I'd say it's a daily thing. I try to do 20 to 40 minutes a day. It not so much as a sort of relaxing thing, but a sort of investigation of my own ego and what it's up to. And my sort of I see myself as an incredibly privileged person, not for any kind of category. I just mean I have literally just been privileged by my parents, having been what they've been, being able to send me to these universities without a university loan. And I just think that it is the ethical duty of someone like me, who has been given that, to do something for other people. And so I guess my purpose is to make as much impact as I can. So as much, and that includes financially, so that I can direct that money to effective altruism. So to altruistic companies or causes that are doing something in the world, that are advancing the human species. I know this sounds like kind of cuckoo maybe, but that's genuinely how I see the world. And so for me, everything I'm doing, I see as built off the back of people who are much greater than I was, who have built a society and built everything, and it's my turn to kind of carry the torch. And I've been given every single privilege, and there's no need for me to be complaining about having such interesting times running companies and jetting around the world. Like I don't want to minimize, like, people can have mental health issues. I've struggled with mental health issues, but it's not that I think that I'm struggling in any way or I need to keep a balance. It's like I'm here to perform the duty the way I see it, and keep. And it just sort of motivates me. Like I don't drink. I don't really go out. I sort of more hang out with people, and I exercise. I try to exercise a lot. I find that has really good effects on hormones, and have a wonderful girlfriend, and so we spend a lot of time together. So I think I don't know. I guess that could be balanced, but I'm definitely not going to. I definitely know when I've worked too much, and if you work too much, then you're not going to be effective the next day, and you're going to affect, your purpose. So I'm definitely aware of when I've had my limits and when it's been counterproductive to my own interests. So I know sometimes I need to just have an earlier day, spend longer in the gym, or go for watch a movie. Yeah.
I like that. So tell us just how do people get hold of you, Larry, and so how do you, what are you prepared to talk about if people do get in touch? But tell us how do people get hold of you?
Yeah, so Larry.Kotch@Manor Biosystems is my email, and then Larry@thebrains.co.uk is the on the marketing side. I'm super happy to talk about anyone who's doing or about to do anything that they think is going to be great for society as a company, or just wants to knock ideas around. I want to know them. I want to talk to them. I want them as a friend. And if they are looking for specific help with marketing, definitely can sort of set them up with people at the Brains. And if anyone's into the insect farming side of things, don't know if that might be the case with your listeners, then happy to chat that too.
I find it absolutely fascinating. Thank you very much, Larry. Much appreciated. Stay on the line. I just want to say goodbye to the audience, and then I'll be back.
Sure. Thanks for having me, Dudley.
Thanks, Larry. Thanks very much. Thanks, Larry, for joining us today, and thank you, everyone, for joining us on another podcast where we did something completely different today. We've actually experienced, I think, the entrepreneurial journey, that special. Those special people in the world that I think that make the difference, that take on tasks that other people are not willing to, but also having a core set of values. And I think from my side, I think the importance of being authentic and real and being true to yourself and to those people around you, I think are critical for success in the long term, because it can bring you short-term gain but long-term pain if you do exactly the unethical stuff that we see out there. But from marketing and business development and so on, nothing happens without a sale. If you do it ethically, you do it properly, and you do it with the right kind of principles, you do it in a fashion that's repeatable and so on, I think there's a lot of scope for growth and for us to be incredibly positive about the future and about where we are right now. And I think we're better off than a lot of our previous generations, regardless of what we think we're going through right now. All the best, everybody. Have a super rest of the week, and we'll catch you on the next podcast. Bye-bye. Hi, everybody. This is Dudley again. And if you need help with a future or existing post-merger integration, I want to invite you to arrange a free, no obligation meeting with us. During the meeting, we'll find out exactly what you need, what your challenges are, and we'll explain how our unique PMI slipstream method can help you. Simply call us or visit mergerintegration.co.uk. That's mergerintegration.co.uk, or come to our website, skillfulpursuit.com.